We're going to talk finance of hydrogen. We've got Wayne Fraser here from RBC. Wayne, can you give a little intro about who you are, what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks Edmonton Global for having us. Wayne Fraser, Managing Director and Head of our corporate client group here in Alberta and Territories. What that really means is I work with a variety of clients. We finance, advise, support their journey, both in their current enterprise and transition and energy and innovation. So glad to be here and spend some time with you and hopefully help others continue their innovation journey.
Wonderful. Again, thanks so much for being here. And you and I have had a couple of conversations about hydrogen and what do we need to do to really shift the market. And we had a session earlier today with ATCO and Qualico talking about how do we build this 87,000 person community that's pure hydrogen. We've been having conversations with trucking companies and trains and buses. All these things happen if we can finance them. Is there work already going on inside RBC to build kind of the financial models to help industries move?
Yeah, thanks, definitely. I come at it at a supply chain angle. What are all the parts that need to come together? And we're involved in financing small, big, large companies. Yeah. And most of it has historically been done what we call on balance sheet. And what that really means for the audience is the strength of the existing company. They're already doing their business like an ATCO or a Qualico. Yeah. And then a supplement is their innovation. So you finance the strength of the balance sheet. They can continue to invest and take on new projects because they've got the balance sheet to absorb taking that innovation and R&D and moving it forward. And then everything else down along the supply chain, it's talking about good connectivity with their suppliers. How do we support that, whether it's supply chain finance, whether it's sustainability loans. Yeah. RBC's made a $500 billion commitment with capital markets for sustainability.
Hold on, 500 billion?
500 billion.
That's a big number.
And we're almost there. But there's also the bank doing loans and sustainability-linked loans and transition-linked loans. So there's a whole bunch of layers that we add and supplement to what the existing business model is to add more capital to keep development, innovation in the next phase happening, including Indigenous reconciliation, including joint ventures, and it's really working backwards from that supply chain to where you're going to who's supplying and how do we find other ways and innovative ways to finance it. And hopefully we're helping people on that journey decarbonize and build a better future. Yeah,
that's an amazing commitment to step up to $500 billion to help this transition to net zero and be more sustainable. Are you able to give examples of some of the projects you're working on? I know often the banks have to be pretty quiet about the things. Are you able to talk about some of the things?
Yeah, I can talk generally. It's simple things, even on power generations, you have to create the hydrogen. So we're looking at sustainable power that is a lower carbon, that does involve carbon capture and sequester. But how do we create a more sustainable model, capture the carbon, make it more efficient just to generate the power that generates the hydrogen? That then feeds, we try to do a closed loop plan with a client on, they're feeding the offtake to a greenhouse. Yeah. Greenhouse can consume the heat that comes off.
Wow.
And the carbon. Power is more sustainable. Then you can generate cheaply to generate more hydrogen. So we finance it as a project base. And it's really phase one. Can we get our head around the commercialization and viability and performance risk? But then how do we think past to phase two and phase three? That's one example, and we're standing up a project finance team for smaller mid-market companies in Alberta presently with our sustainability finance team that come talk to anyone at RBC and we'll make an intro. We've got another plant they're trying to innovate right now where they've got some interesting offtakes. Hydrogen is one, paraffin wax, and they managed to get a biodegradable fuel that works in a diesel engine. And that's, again, another example where they're using, to show proof of concept, an Indigenous nation is consuming that because it's biodegradable on water. So it's connecting, again, the financing need with what the purpose is, with who's buying it, and layering it all in together. So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
So, I know I've spoken to especially, people in the VC community around some of this, and often those innovation plays come with a bit of a higher price point when it's financing, especially if they can't do that on-book financing. are you guys giving any preferential? Is it standard rates? Just what does the structure look like?
Yeah, so that's evolving based mainly on what's been happening in capital markets. That's the investor community that's buying the debt, and they're incentivizing. We want to move the dial and move the money. So there's a real rigor around the metrics and auditing it even post financing to make sure it's meeting those metrics. That's driving discounts and incentives in capital markets. But when we talk sustainability and transition loans, similarly, we're putting the same scrutiny around. There's no greenwashing. How do you make it practical? How do you track it? So it's still early days because the market is new at it, but everyone is receptive. It's our part as a good corporate citizen to help incentivize and educate. So it's coming, and it's deal by deal specific now. So it's not a commodity as you're hearing just on how we finance it. But definitely there's preferential rates and attractiveness because everyone wants to move this agenda forward.
Absolutely. And again, I made the joke at the beginning that we went from Hydrogen 101 to make things simple. And talking about the money side can get super complex, especially when you start to layer in things like carbon taxes and clean fuel standards and all of these other programs are going to be coming that change how the dollars work. How into the weeds do you guys get?
Well, everyone loves the banker because we ask a ton of questions and underwrite, and most of that's actually a risk discussion. How do we understand, manage that risk, and then finance it? That's helpful because there's always two sides of the coin. So we get right into the weeds, we get right into the detail, but it helps the clients think about things they may not have, and it's more about different perspectives. They're the entrepreneur, they're the inventor, they're the engineers. We just come alongside and add another perspective to help them on that journey. So we get right into the weeds. But that's also where the innovation happens in those discussions too. Did you think of this? What about this? And that's where the solutions tend to come because it's not. We're creating a new world here.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't happen easily, and it has to happen with intention and detail. And so we get right into that, and hope that helps.
Yeah, it's again, the big themes for this week have been about the speed that we're now really starting to accelerate. Last year there was lots of talk about what's happening, what can we do in the future. This year it's more about announcement, deployment. This is happening now, and Canada often gets kind of a bad reputation for moving slow. In this situation, I think we're moving really fast. We're probably among the fastest moving in the world, and it's wonderful to see that RBC is one of the major financial institutions that's saying, yes, we're ready to help you move fast. Let's look at the risk profile. Let's figure out how you can do this to be more sustainable, not put your money at risk. So it's really outstanding. It makes me wonder though too, if you're an international company looking to invest in projects here, to start work here, can they work with you? Do they need to do their own financing from the countries they're coming from? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think the one answer for all of your questions has been phone us and have a discussion. We'll get you to the right people. We're still Canada's largest bank and global, and we're talking to companies in all industries from around the world that are coming to Canada already. Yeah. So talk to us. And yes, we have, Europe, we got a great hydrogen team already stood up in Europe, and decarbonization and trade and carbon credits. Even in the ag sector, we've done a lot on agriculture lately that you would have seen at our annual meeting a couple weeks ago, helping farmers democratize what they're capturing for carbon and really moving that ESG forward. So yes, international companies, they're all coming here. And great kudos to things like this conference in Edmonton Global and the great hub that Alberta's become. I think you once told me we'd be top 10 in the world if we were a country, just for how much hydrogen we're producing.
Yeah. Just our region, if it was a country, we'd be in the top 10.
And people don't know that because, back to your point on Canada, we can be quiet, and we shouldn't be, because we've got great minds, great people figuring out really complex things for the right reasons.
Yeah. And I'm going to go off that a little bit because I think people don't talk about it here, let alone globally. We've got Dow that just yesterday made a big announcement with Linde, that Linde will be their exclusive provider of hydrogen for their $10 billion net zero ethylene and polyethylene facility. We're expecting FID on that Q4 of this year. So we're all, fingers crossed that moves. So Dow's $10 billion. Linde hasn't talked about the dollar value of their project yet, but it will be similar scale to Air Products. And Air Products is building a $1.6 billion hydrogen facility here, largest net zero facility in the world. Capital Power is doing a $3 billion retrofit to make their power stations here net zero by doing carbon capture and moving into hydrogen. Heidelberg just did a $1.4 billion announcement on net zero cement, largest project in the world. We didn't even talk Qualico's numbers, largest community, pure hydrogen in the world. Air Products yesterday announced the world's largest hydrogen fueling station. Shell's got about $1 billion of projects underway right now around net zero upgrading of fuels. I think we've got more than $18 billion in capital projects, either in construction, about to be construction, or right at the edge of FID, which would make us one of the busiest places in the world for this net zero economy.
I love the numbers you throw out and the diversity of those numbers, because it's important. You need someone to kind of be the leader and open that, and they're putting real money, real capital at risk and taking and leading us all. But the important piece of what you said that I think is even more important for people to grasp, and I'm an economist, was my first degree, but there's a multiplier effect. It's not just what they're innovating. If you think of all of what goes into building that expansion, not just the innovation, but manufacturing, trades, skills, engineers, the ripple effect of what you've talked about can hit home to everybody in a well-diversified economy. So these are real impacts, not just the headline, which is fantastic. Yeah. People have a tough time getting their head around billion, but it does hit home to everyday Albertans that these are good jobs, smart jobs, and good production. So it's important that we keep touting that. I'm glad you guys are doing it, but also connecting people to the impact they're having.
Well, I think too, it's to your point of that's the capital. There's OpEx on top of that. So that's the direct. There's also the indirect and the induced, and that's all the things that are going to be built into these facilities are going to be built somewhere, and largely they're the pipes and the pumps and the tanks, the plumbing. All of those things are going to be made here as well. So that knock-on is gigantic. The companies that are moving, the trucking companies moving those materials from where they're made to where they're being assembled. The restaurants that are feeding those employees is moving back and forth. The busing companies that are moving, construction workers onto those sites. All of that is part of that knock-on impact. And again, we're trying to actually decarbonize that whole supply chain, all those different pieces. So it's having that massive construction, while all those other pieces are also trying to decarbonize, helps us move fast. And it's going to need money for all of it.
Very well said. We're a part of all of that journey because all of those clients, whether it's a trucking company, the restaurants, RBC's on every street corner. So we're helping finance that OpEx and that CapEx. But doing the right thing has a payoff and an economic benefit. And we got to keep telling that story and keep the progress.
Yeah, I love that. Doing the right thing has an economic impact and a benefit. It's not just about integrity, morals, and doing the right thing. It's also good economics, which that's how you get the virtuous cycle and actually move things and move them fast. Okay, so we're just about to wrap up. We've got lots of engineers here, lots of people that are making things. When you walk around the room from kind of that economist, banking side, what's really catching your eye?
All of it. And what I mean by that is you should come check this out if you haven't been here this year. Come this year, come next year. A little bit more background. My dad was an engineer, so I come by it honestly. We're always building and tinkering. I'm also on the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters National Board because I think the world needs more Canada. And, you're always going to learn something or see something new when you got this kind of diverse talent. So my encouragement is right back to you. Come walk the floor, have some conversations. You'll see something new, you'll learn something new, and it'll spark an idea. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wayne.